When leaders announce job numbers, headlines scream domestic failure or political victory. But for Washington's strategists, a shrinking labor market is not just an election-year liability, it is a hard ceiling on American power projection. If the United States cannot sustain its own industrial base and technical workforce at home, the leverage required to pressure rivals like China or Russia evaporates. The next job report isn't a scorecard for politicians. It's a readout of how much strategic bandwidth Washington actually has left to fight global competitors. When the U.S. economy misses payroll expectations, it is easy to view this through the lens of domestic politics. A loss of 23,000 jobs in July might look like a sign that an administration is losing its grip on voters or failing to manage inflation. However, from the vantage point of realpolitik and strategic competition, these numbers represent something far more consequential than voter sentiment. They signal a contraction in what experts call the industrial commons, the vital network of skills, suppliers, and production capacity needed to support advanced manufacturing and national security objectives. The core issue is not simply that fewer people are working today compared to last month. The deeper problem lies in how this data point limits Washington's ability to execute economic statecraft against great power rivals. To understand why a single employment figure matters for the balance of global power, we must look at the structural erosion that has occurred over decades and how it currently constrains American options. The first critical insight is recognizing that recent labor market cooling serves as a direct constraint on strategic bandwidth. Data indicates U.S. unemployment rising from 3.8% to nearly 4%, with job additions slowing significantly in recent reporting periods. This contraction is not merely cyclical, meaning it will bounce back automatically when the economy recovers. Rather, it signals the erosion of the foundational capacity required for sustained great power competition. If the United States cannot staff its advanced manufacturing base due to these domestic labor constraints, it loses the ability to enforce sanctions effectively or sustain alliances through hard industrial backing. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. This brings us to the second beat, understanding the scale of the gap in the American industrial commons since the late 1970s. To visualize this structural weakness, consider that U.S. manufacturing employment has dropped by over 30% during that period. Between 2001 and 2009 alone, more than 42,000 factories were lost. This created a profound separation where innovation often remains domestic while production moves abroad. The result is a vulnerability in critical supply chains when facing an export-led growth model like China's, which has kept its industrial base intact and expanding even during global downturns. The specific bottleneck complicating this picture further is the erosion of what we call the skilled technical workforce. This demographic comprises roughly 12 to 23% of the total U.S. workforce. Yet it includes workers with high-level technical knowledge who do not require four-year university degrees but are essential for operating advanced machinery and maintaining complex supply chains. Decades of offshoring pressures have hollowed out this critical group. Automation often saved output while killing these specific jobs, creating a paradox where the U.S. produces more value in some sectors but lacks the human capital to mobilize it quickly when national security demands arise. While American labor markets face cooling trends and wage stagnation pressures, China is actively pivoting toward high-tech manufacturing to offset domestic real estate struggles. This creates an asymmetric race between two very different economic models. Evidence shows a surging 8.4% increase in imports for AI equipment by Chinese entities, indicating a deliberate buildup of production capacity even as they manage their own internal challenges. In contrast, the United States faces a strategic disadvantage where it must compete with a rival that has successfully integrated production capacity while Washington grapples with its own labor supply constraints and an aging industrial base. This divergence forces a re-evaluation of how American power is projected globally. The U.S. strategy has long relied on leveraging market size to enforce rules. But if domestic production is too weak to support rapid mobilization or technological dominance in areas like artificial intelligence and green energy infrastructure, that leverage shrinks significantly. Without robust domestic production alternatives for semiconductors or energy systems, sanctions against Russia and China become less credible because the United States lacks the supply chain depth to replace lost trade flows if a partner is cut off. Furthermore, allies in Europe and Asia look for partners who can guarantee security through industrial capacity rather than just financial promises. A shrinking labor force undermines the hard power backing of these alliances. If Washington cannot demonstrate it has the workforce to build or repair critical defense assets quickly, its ability to lead coalition efforts weakens over time. The job loss figure acts as a leading indicator that suggests the United States may need to pivot from free trade assumptions toward a more protectionist, supply chain-centric strategy just to maintain parity with China. Ultimately, viewing this data through incentives and power dynamics reveals why Washington cannot simply ignore these numbers as domestic noise. The strategic bandwidth required to compete effectively is tied directly to the health of the industrial workforce on American soil. As long as the labor market remains constrained by structural gaps in technical skills and factory capacity, U.S. foreign policy options will remain limited compared to a rival that continues to expand its production base. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.